Hello, my name is Cecilia Elisiu, and I am the Director of Global Ballet Teachers and a soloist dancer and teacher at the Pacific Northwest Ballet in the United States. And here at Global Ballet Teachers, we offer free community-led courses, classes, and resources to educate and empower teachers around the world. And we are thrilled to have Andrew Holdsworth with us today. He has produced all of the music for the latest RAD, Royal Academy of Dance music. So he is perfect person to have created our music for ballet class online course that we offer for our community. And it is an introduction to music theory and dance rhythms, while also providing ballet teachers with the skills they need to apply this knowledge into their ballet classes with their students. So in today's video, we will be covering the top 10 questions that we received about music for ballet in relation to the course and otherwise. So let's get started with our first question. So question number one is, in ballet classes, what key elements should I look for in music when playing for pre-ballet and beginner ballet classes?
Okay, hi everyone. Yeah, good question. So I do think that there is a difference between music that you would use for younger children and music you would use for teens and music you would use for adults. I think there are lots of elements. One is the predictability of music for children. If you're starting with very young children, I think the beat needs to be constant. The time signature needs to be simple. So 2/4 or 3/4, 6/8. Nothing unsquare. No fives, no sevens, no nines. And even in phrase lengths, I think groups of 2, groups of 4, groups of 8. That's what you would be looking for. You'd also be looking for familiarity. I think young children listen to a different kind of music to, adults and teenagers. So I think that in my work with the RAD, when we were devising the pre-primary and primary syllabus, we looked for familiarity. That was probably our primary concern: familiarity. Tunes that the children would probably have heard on the television, or to some extent little bits of Nutcracker, simple bits of Nutcracker, or the simple ballets, bits of Mozart that he might have written when he was young. In fact, I've got the pre-primary and primary book here. I had a quick look at that earlier just to remind myself. I think quite a lot of bouncy music, 6/8, light, nothing too slow, nothing too serious. I also think it's really useful to have a wide variety of sound. So for instance, an orchestra, a piano, maybe even a jazzy sound, or a solo saxophone or a solo violin. I think the education of developing musicality in dancers starts at a very early age, and if you can get them to listen to instruments and and really appreciate the sonority of the sounds, the shape that the timbres that these instruments make, I think that's very useful. Anything else for the young children?
I have a question, like, what about length of track? Do you usually go shorter or longer?
Okay, that is a good question. So as someone who produces a lot of this kind of music, for the RAD, we did everything in 16 and 32 bars, which might be 32 or 64 counts for dancers. I think teachers can always stop, if they find music that they love, Baby Shark or something, you can always stop it after 40 seconds. You don't have to listen to the whole piece of music. There are free bits of editing software where you can, if you've got a computer, you can chop the ends off, or you can make your own length, or you can just turn the volume down, or pause the phone or whatever. So I don't necessarily think everything needs to have an ending. I think that's quite confining, in the sense that it means you can use a lot less music, because most music is more than 40 seconds long. Having said that, I think it's also useful to have endings in some pieces so children know how to end. Particularly when they're 6 years old, if they've got to finish, then they've got to finish on it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with like the longer tracks of music too, because especially for like across the floor or running in circles or running patterns, like you don't want it to stop and then you have to go back to the phone and turn it back on. It just becomes like a bit of a hesitation in the class rather than it just flowing through. But I agree with like needing to finish so that kids know like, and now we're done, rather than just kind of running off.
One more thing that sprang to mind while you were saying that, I think I've done 3 albums for what's it called, Adventures in Preschool Dance, and which are on Spotify. And one of the characteristics that you wouldn't get for older people is there's a variety within a track. You can use a variety of sounds. So for instance, there's one called creep, wobble, and bounce. So you listen carefully, and if the music's creepy, you creep around. If it's wobbly, then you wobble, and if it's bouncy, then you'll bounce. Things like that. Obviously, with adults and teens, you wouldn't do that. You would be looking at different kinds of things to develop in older children, but younger children can really respond to that. And although if you've got running in a circle, you want running music all the way, but it's useful also to use some music that does have timbre changes. Listen for the quiet bit, listen for the spooky bit, listen for the fast bit, listen for the running, listen for the skipping, listen for the frog, or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, that leads perfectly into our next question is, can we hear a piece of music appropriate for advanced students, and why would it not be appropriate for younger students?
All right, so okay, so in ballet terms, anything that's probably written in the 20th century, Stravinsky, Prokofiev, things like this are just not really suitable for younger children. I think I'm a bit reluctant to say younger children should never dance to Romeo and Juliet or Rite of Spring or whatever. It's everything's an education. If it's introduced to children correctly, then it's all a part of the experience, isn't it? But I think ballet, Nutcracker is the best. Nutcracker is the best in the sense that there's lots of things that are square. There's lots of the Russian dance and all these kind of dances which are 16 in groups of 16, and they're just easy to dance to. They're pretty standard, really standard rhythms. And I think things like minuets, Mozart minuets, things like that might be suitable for younger children. For advanced students, with advanced students, you can throw them anything. You can throw them jazz waltzes, you can throw them things in different time signatures, mix it up, do a 5, do a 7, I've been doing that with my students recently, trying to get them to just dance on a 5, do a 3, then a 2, then a 3, then a 2. That's quite interesting. You wouldn't normally do that with younger children. I think also with advanced students, they're probably more likely to appreciate more sophisticated music. So I don't know, teens might like Billie Eilish music and
do more of the
stuff
pop
like that.
Music.
That kind of thing. And a lot of my work has been reimagining that music in a balletic style. Whereas for younger children, I would tend not to. I mean, younger children actually respond very well to musical theatre. Things like Pinocchio and lots of kind of Frozen and all this kind of stuff, because they've seen it on the TV, and a lot of that is quite square. Certainly my arrangements of it are. So, and some musical theatre, West Side Story, use it, and things like that, more Les Mis, stuff like that, leave it for the older students and the more advanced students. I think, are there any other things to? No, does that answer your question?
I think so. Yeah. So for the more advanced students, like use the more complex rhythms, like change up the meter and the way that you count it. But then with the kids, like really making sure it's a structured counting, and there's a beginning and an end, and the students, it can kind of, or the more advanced students, it can flow through different.
One more thing that came to me. I think that for advanced students, you would expect a wider range of dynamics in their dance. And because of that, you probably use a wider range of dynamics in the music. And to some extent, advanced students can jump higher, therefore their jump music will be slower. And there are all these little differences, and little children wouldn't be leaping around doing grand allegros all over the place, and they wouldn't need these big waltzes. So little children probably need more kind of steady 6/8 for them to jump do petit allegro to and this kind of stuff.
No, that was awesome.
one final thing about era, I think that you know, Baroque, classical, romantic, all the musical 20th century, I think they're all valid for all ages. But I think say, listen to this Baroque, isn't this stately, isn't this, you know, what does this make you feel? And you know, 20th century music, wow, listen to how dissonant that is. Isn't that making, you know, that's not a nice sound, or is that a nice sound? Or, you know, I think all ages can respond to different types of music. So
yeah, I like that idea, especially for younger students. Like they're just working on marching and coordination, and so try these different styles of music. So Baroque versus like a pop
yeah,
song, and like how do
absolutely.
you react differently to the music, and using that as the music education in your ballet classes
Yeah.
in a really constructive way. Awesome.
Yeah.
So this also kind of leads on to question number 3, which is should I use different music for beginners who are children versus beginners who are adults?
I would say yes. I think there's no point playing Boys and Girls Come Out to Play or Twinkle Twinkle for a lot of adults. They're not going to respond to it in the way you want them to.
Right.
There is a lot of music in the same kind of feel, classical music. I mean, that you could use just a bit more grown up. I think adults need to feel like adults. They don't want to feel like children, and children need to feel like children, and they don't want to feel like adults, you know. So I do think there's a different kind of repertoire. I've recorded loads of music for children, which is very specific, got very specific sound. And then as they get older, the sounds get more sophisticated. And yeah, by the time we get to adults, I mean, I've recorded a lot of orchestral music for ballet, and you know, that can be really nice. For instance, I've done some piano versions of musical theatre and then orchestral versions of it. So it's very interesting to compare the difference. How does it feel to dance with a piano? How does it feel to dance with an orchestra? So yes, I think you should have different music for adults.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And especially when we were talking about advanced students versus pre-ballet students, how that difference is. So yeah, you wouldn't want to treat the kids like the adults and the adults like the kids. Awesome. So next question number 4 is, when preparing a performance for students, what kind of music is suitable for which age group of dancers? And how long should the piece be? So, for example, this teacher said, I need to choreograph a classical ballet solo for 7 to 8-year-olds or 9 to 10-year-old age groups. What would the music be appropriate for that level, those ages, and what should they look for?
Okay, we've covered some of this already. I think, you know, what kind of music is suitable for which age group of dancers. I think that 7 and 8, I'll show you this. This is grades music, grades 1 to 3 that I did with the RED 10 years ago, but it's still valid. And so grades 1, 2, and 3, we did a lot of character music for grades 1, 2, and 3. So music from Eastern Europe. Children of that age tend to respond very well to that. It's quite simple, but it's got an interesting sound to it. It might have, you know, balalaicas and interesting mandolins, interesting instruments. It's not just ballet all the time. I think about what the children are going to respond to. I think about what dynamics you want them to, you know, portray on stage. I think a variety is really important. I don't think there's any point getting 7 and 8-year-olds and 9 and 10-year-olds and just doing Tchaikovsky on stage with them. I don't think that's necessarily going to entertain the audience, and it's not going to bring the best out of the kids all the time. I think that you need to mix things up. And you know, different groups of children just doing, I mean, you can if you've got the right software, you can edit things together. So you might have take a minute from Nutcracker and then, you know, do a musical theatre song for a minute and then go back into Nutcracker for ending or whatever. How long this should be, it's completely up to you. I think obviously as the children get older, they can remember more. I think sometimes it's better to do a short piece on stage with younger children and get them to get it right. Yeah, because they will get less nervous. I think if they're dancing for 3 minutes, they will forget some of it, unless it's very repetitive. You know, that's one thing that you can do with young children. Just get them to repeat something 4 times. So I need to choreograph a classical ballet solo for 7 or 8 or 9 to 10. I think I've kind of partly answered this before. There are Tchaikovsky is obviously the best place to start looking for. If you really want classical ballet, look in the Nutcracker first, and then look in Swan Lake and Sleeping Beauty. A lot of Sleeping Beauty is a lot of it is less suitable for younger children, in the sense that quite a lot of it is not even phrase lengths. Because Nutcracker is so childish, it's, you know, it's intended for children. I think that he had that in mind, to have it, to make it easy to listen to. It was all in 4s and 8s and 16s, which makes it easy to dance to on stage.
Yeah, so maybe straying away from like an adagio only piece and having it be a little bit more of an allegro, like faster paced, or at least something, I don't know, I'm thinking like the Coppelia Mazurka, dun, dun,
Oh yeah.
dun, 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 and just it kind of has the ebbs and flows a little bit within the music, so that the kids, I don't know, there's a big crash and the kids know, okay, now I have to jump, in case they kind of got lost earlier in the piece, they know kind of where to pick up. So would you say like having music that has clearly different sections in it to help the students as well?
Absolutely, sections are great. I mean, most classical music that exists on its own would not really have, you know, a minute of running, a minute of ethereal, and then a minute of skipping to end, and a big ending. You know, in a way, you need to look for specific people like me and other people out there on Spotify who have made specific music for children to dance to in festivals or on stage and all this kind of stuff. Or, as I say, just edit things together. Edit a little petit allegro piece together, followed by a, I don't know, port de bras, followed by a whatever to finish, you know, something a bit bigger maybe, with a, you know, I would consider doing that.
Yeah.
As well,
awesome.
Rather than looking for a piece of Tchaikovsky's that's got those elements, because you'll be looking for a long time. You know, if they existed, everybody would use them, but in my experience, they don't always exist. And, you know, so there you go.
Awesome. Okay, question number 5. Do you typically use music for stretching, and if so, what kind?
All right, well, in my class music that I make, stretching is the one piece of music that I can, it doesn't have to have even phrase lengths, it doesn't have to, well, I suppose it's a steady tempo, but it doesn't have to conform in the way that other music for exercises has to conform. You know, petit allegros, you wouldn't have groups of 9, you know, the kids would fall over. And you know, even port de bras, you just wouldn't have these extended phrases. But really, for stretching, if it's got the right mood, you know, stretching is about being in your own thoughts and just thinking about what you've done at the bar and getting ready to go in the center. And I think that as long as it's calming music, it can be pretty much anything really. And in a way, it might be a nice time to introduce something orchestral and gentle, or, you know, or gentle piano music or something like that. So yes, that's my answer.
So even for the younger kids, where we were saying like the pre-ballet beginner levels, that it needs to have a really clear structure to the music, you're saying for the stretching music, you can experiment here and do something different.
Well, I think so, yeah. I mean, if it's a free stretch, if everybody's stretching by themselves, you know, and doing their own stretches, if it's more choreographed, and if we're stretching on this side at this time, then yes, you probably need something a bit more predictable for the teacher. But as long as the teacher knows in advance the shape of the piece, really, you know, I am much more flexible with stretching music than almost anything else.
Yeah, awesome, great. Well, question number 6 is counting in duple meter easier for younger students?
Okay, so yeah, this is an interesting question. I know there are different schools of thought on this. I'm not an expert on Vaganova, but I do know that, or I'm fairly sure that children don't get onto counting in 3s until they are 11, 12. Now, at the RAD, we never considered that. We thought that was overly restricting. And to be honest, I don't know. Maybe you know the reason for that. Do you know the reason for no?
No, I don't. But I will say that I feel like I count a lot more in 2s than I do in 3s within like a ballet class for our like company class. There's a lot more duple meter than there is triple meter. And so it just got me thinking, like, what is the difference in teaching students?
Right, okay. I reckon if I went through this book, I would find 50-50. I think between kind of waltzy things in 3 and things in 2. To my mind, I don't think there's any hard and fast rules. I wouldn't be as strict as a Vaganova. I think there's no reason why. I don't think it's true that young children can't dance in 3. I think that it just depends what you're trying to do, really. And I don't know, in my classes, again, I'm going to say 50-50. I do get asked for a lot of things in 3, but I suppose 2 is a bit more predictable and easy for people sometimes. And, you know, 6/8's almost interchangeable with 2. So people, you know, often for Petit Allegro would, instead of using a 2, if they wanted a little bit more time in the air or whatever, it feels like they're getting longer in the air, then they'd use a 6/8 instead of a 2. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a specific answer I would give to that, other than, you know, maybe it's a bit easier, but I don't think you should shy away from 3/4. I would, on the other hand, shy away from anything too much more complicated, like you know, 5s and 7s. Although, having said that, in the RED grade 3, there's a triple jig. In fact, there are quite a few triple jigs in the RED syllabus, which is 3 lots of 3, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 1. You know, that's a triple jig. You know, and they love jumping to that. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, that leads into our next question. When should triple meter be introduced?
Yes, I saw that on the list, and I think to some extent I've answered that, really. I there's no hard and fast rules.
Great. So question number 8 is, what is the difference between 2/4 and 4/4?
Okay, so this is largely a matter of convention, okay, in the sense that a 2/4 and a 4/4 are both strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak. You know, how things are written has changed as well over the ages from a classical music point of view. Marches are almost always written in 2. Pop songs, jazz songs, almost always written in 4. There's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't write a march in 4, and I'm sure some composers do. And to some extent, there's no reason why you shouldn't write a pop song in 2. You know, I think maybe it might be to do with where the drum beats land in pop music. You get the bass drum on 1, you get the kick drum on 1, snare on 2, kick drum on 3, snare on 4. And I think for some reason that has become the convention. I also think that in pop songs, phrase lengths might be longer, so things might sound a bit chopped up, or might look on the page to musicians who are playing it in the studio a bit too chopped up if it was in 2. For 90% of duple meter that I'm asked for is 2. I'm really not asked very often for 4. And to some extent, they're interchangeable anyway. If someone wants music of the night or something, you know, then, or I don't know, maybe some opera aria or something with very long phrases, then they'll say, I want a 4/4. But for jumping, stuff like that, you'd never, marching, you would always ask for a 2. I suppose an adage could quite easily be a 4/4, and port de bras, I suppose, now I think about it. So yeah, I wouldn't get hung up on it, though. I wouldn't get hung up on it. Don't worry about if you can't tell the difference. You know, someone could play the same piece of music to me and say, is that 2 or 4? And I would give a different answer to a different musician.
Yeah, so you would count it similarly.
Yeah, I would count it similarly.
Okay. Yeah. So it's just like knowing that they're 2 different ones, but maybe it doesn't matter as a teacher to understand exactly like this music is a 2/4, this music is a 4/4, and that's really going to determine how I teach it to my students.
I think so, and also to some extent tempo. Actually, now I think about it, I think if a 2/4 would tend to be faster, you would not tend to have a slow 2/4. Although I suppose you could have a funeral march. Sorry, excuse me. You could have a funeral march, that would be quite unusual. So, you know, something adagio port de bras would tend to be slower, therefore probably would tend to be a 4/4 as well.
Awesome. That clears things up for me actually too, because I was like, I feel like you would count them the same, but it's just knowing the difference and not really stressing too much about it.
Yeah.
Question number 9. What is the difference between a 4 and an 8?
Okay, so if it's got 8 at the bottom, then it implies a certain number of quavers in the bar. If it's got 4 on the bottom, it would imply a certain number of crotchets in the bar. In most ballet music, unless it's a 6/8, it would probably have a 4 at the bottom. 3/4, waltzes, things like that, mazurkas would be written in 3/4, polonaises written in 3/4, marches written in 2/4. So to some extent, again, it's down to convention. Again, it's down to, you could write a pop song in, you could, I suppose, write a pop song in 4/8 or in 8/8 rather than 4/4. There's no reason why not to do that, other than convention, and also it looks messy on the page. So it really is. It's to do with what looks clean on the page. You don't want lots of quaver lines everywhere. So that's it really. I mean, you things like well, this would be a 6/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. Wait a minute. Oh, I'm playing a triple jig. I've got triple jigs in my head now. Okay, there we go. You would always write that in 6/8. You would never write it in 6/4. That would just be weird. But again, it's down to convention. So yeah, I hope that gives you some idea.
So would you count 4 and an 8 differently, or again, is it the
not
same?
Necessarily? No, I mean, this is in 6/8, but you would count it 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It depends how you're counting things. If you're a musician, you would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But teachers try and do that in class sometimes. I think it's ridiculous. You shouldn't be counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, in a triple jig. You just stay away from all that kind of stuff. Stick with 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. If you want to put in the detail in the middle of the beat, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Yeah, don't count to 6, don't count to 8.
Well, that actually leads right into our last and final question, number 10, is what's the difference between counting music 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8?
Okay, the and in music can tell us a lot about the feel of the music. So what I just did was 1 and 2 and 3, a bouncy and. It's called what the ISTD calls unequal eighths, I think, or yeah, I think that's it. Jazz musician would call it swung eighths. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Whereas if you're doing a march, you go 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, which is a very even and, isn't it? So to some extent, you could do both. I like and. For instance, 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and it sounds better to me than 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2. 1 and a, or in a bouncy 6/8, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and, or in a bouncy 9/8, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3. I think you get a lot of information, and really, from a piano player's point of view, if the teacher puts the ands in and to get the and right, so we know whether it's swung, we know whether it's uneven or whether it's even, whether it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's all the information I need. I think you very rarely have to count to 8. I think if you've got specific choreographic things that you want to happen on 7, for instance, you could say, explain to your class that, on the 7th beat, you would do, I don't know, a certain step. But from a musical point of view, I never count to 8 in my head or to a class.
So for like beginner level students, would you introduce the and element too, or is that confusing for them?
No, I don't think it's confusing. I mean, you've got to, I think you've got to get them to figure out what the difference is between a 2/4 and a 6/8, if they're, and you can't, as a teacher, you can't go 1 and 2 and over something that's musically going 1 and 2 and. So I think you will automatically, if you're a musical teacher, you will automatically count it correctly. I don't think you need to get too hung up on, is this swung, is this, I think, and also the children will hear in the music the nature of the swinginess, if it's swung or if it's straight.
It helps like determine the rhythm a little bit more with the and rather than it
I
just
think
being
so.
like a flat.
Whenever a ballet teacher, when I'm teaching ballet teachers how to ask for music, I always say it's all very well counting 1, 2, 3, 1, but what do I do in between there? There is no information for me as a pianist, and to some extent there's no information for your dancers. But if it's 1 and 2 and 3, or 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, you know, that'll give me a sense of 1, or you can ask for something flowing, or, you know, I think just counting simple numbers is pretty useless to a musician if you've got a musician in the room. And to the dancers too, I think it can help them if you count it with a certain accent, and so they can hear that in your voice.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, these were all such informative answers. Thank you so much, Andrew. And I
Very
hope
welcome.
teachers, you feel more informed knowing the answers to these questions. And if you have any more, we will make more videos. So thank you so much to the teachers for submitting these, and Andrew for answering them so eloquently. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.